My wife slept with her gym trainer while I paid our rent, so I changed the locks, emptied the account, and watched her cry on the porch. I'm a 32-year-old husband who thought I had the dream marriage. Most nights I'd drag myself home after another 10-hour shift at the warehouse, the smell of oil and cardboard still clinging to my clothes, and find our little apartment glowing softly with the warmth of scented candles. She'd be there, usually in her workout gear, cheeks flushed from another evening session at the gym, a water bottle still beading with condensation. I loved that look on her, like she was chasing something healthy, something we could both be proud of. She used to wait up for me with dinner half warm in the oven, asking about my day with that sparkle in her eyes. Lately, though, the sparkle flickered like a dying bulb. Her phone barely left her hand. She'd tilt the screen away when I passed by, thumb moving fast like she was hiding a secret. When I leaned in for a kiss, she'd give me a quick peck and a distracted smile before turning back to her messages. I told myself it was nothing. Everyone deserves a little privacy. We were solid. We had built our marriage on trust, hadn't we? Still, there were nights when I'd walk into an apartment that felt emptier than usual, the echo of my own footsteps louder than the hum of the refrigerator. The silence carried a weight I couldn't name. One evening, as I collapsed on the couch and listened to the distant rhythm of city traffic, her key turned in the lock nearly an hour later than she'd promised. Her cheeks were flushed again, but not from the cold. I caught the faintest trace of cologne that wasn't mine. I opened my mouth to ask, then closed it. My chest tightened, but I swallowed the unease. Trust, I reminded myself. That's what marriage is built on. Yet, somewhere deep down, a single, jagged thought began to scratch, and it refused to be silenced. Her routine started to twist into something I barely recognized. At first, it was early morning classes, the kind of thing I admired, discipline before sunrise. But soon those dawn sessions bled into nights that stretched far past closing time, her excuses coated in the same easy smile she'd once saved just for me. "The trainer's adding extra rounds," she'd say, tossing her ponytail like it explained everything. I wanted to believe it. I needed to. Our friends noticed before I could put words to the change. At a weekend cookout, my buddy Aaron nudged me, half joking. "Man, she's glowing. Trainer must know some magic moves." Everyone laughed, even her, especially her. The sound rang a little too sharp in my ears. She caught my gaze across the table, and for a heartbeat her smile faltered, as if she'd been caught mid-performance. Then it was back, brighter than before. At home, her phone became a fortress. The soft buzz of incoming messages had a new urgency. Her thumbs moved like lightning, and entire conversations vanished before I could even glance. Once, when I reached for her phone to check the time, she snatched it back so fast it nearly slipped from her grip. "Battery's dying," she said, voice too light, eyes too wide. My gut began to hum with a quiet alarm, the kind that doesn't scream but settles deep in your bones. Still, every time suspicion clawed its way up, I forced it back down. We had history. We had trust. I told myself that accusing her without proof would only poison what we'd built. Yet, as each night stretched longer and each morning came with a brittle excuse, the silence between us grew sharp enough to cut. I kept waiting for the old warmth to return, but it never did. Only the faint vibration of her phone in the dark, each buzz a question I was too afraid to ask. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday night, the kind you never expect to crack your life in half. I'd just come home from another long shift, the smell of damp cardboard still clinging to my jacket, when her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She was in the shower, steam curling beneath the bathroom door. I glanced out of habit, just a reflex. The screen lit up with 5 words that sucked the air from my lungs. "Can't wait for tonight, M." My chest tightened until it felt like someone had cinched a belt around my ribs. For a moment I told myself it could mean anything, a friend, a class, but my fingers moved before I could stop them. One swipe and her messages unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. There they were, lines of teasing, late-night whispers written in pixels. You looked incredible today. Still thinking about last night. A string of winking emojis. My wife's replies were worse, playful, breathless, each one a dagger dressed in digital flirtation. Heat rushed to my face. A sick mix of rage and something colder, betrayal that settled deep in my stomach like a stone. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. For a wild second I pictured storming into the bathroom, ripping open the door, demanding answers while the shower still ran. But the image dissolved into a sharper clarity. Not yet. Not like this. I snapped screenshots, each one a piece of armor. I forwarded them to my private email, my pulse thundering like a war drum. The sound of running water masked the faint clicks of the camera. By the time she stepped out, wrapped in a towel and humming some tune, I was seated on the couch, phone face down, heart hammering a secret rhythm. She smiled at me, casual, unsuspecting. And for the first time in our marriage, I smiled back, knowing something she didn't. I kept the mask on like it was stitched to my skin. Every morning I left for work before dawn, dropping the rent check in the landlord's box, paying the utilities on time, making sure our fridge stayed full, while the screenshots on my phone burned a hole through my pocket. She breezed through our days with a laugh that sounded brighter than ever, throwing casual comments about her killer workouts and extra evening sessions. Each word landed like a splinter. Sleep became a stranger. I'd lie in the dark, the ceiling fan slicing the silence, and picture her with him. His hands where mine used to be, her breathless laugh filling some shadowed corner of the gym. The images came uninvited like shards of a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I'd turn, fists clenched under the pillow, willing my heartbeat to slow. Her stories grew bolder. "The trainer thinks I can push harder," she'd say, wiping a fake bead of sweat from her forehead. "He says I've got the stamina of an athlete." She smirked like it was an inside joke I wasn't meant to understand. My jaw ached from holding back every retort. Then came the subtle jabs. One evening she glanced at me over dinner, her fork poised mid-air. "You know," she said lightly, "you should join me at the gym. You're starting to look a little out of shape." The words slid under my skin like a blade. I felt the sting long after her laugh drifted across the table. I forced a smile so tight it hurt. "Maybe one day," I muttered, my voice steady while my chest burned. She nodded, satisfied, and turned back to her phone, thumbs dancing, a tiny, secret grin tugging at her lips. In that moment, the bitterness inside me hardened into something sharper, and for the first time, I welcomed it. The more I played the part of the oblivious husband, the more careful I became at collecting quiet truths. Late at night, when she drifted into the soft breathing of sleep, I'd sit at the glow of my laptop, scrolling through bank statements like I was tracing a crime scene. I told myself I was only looking for dates to match her workouts, but what I found made my pulse roar in my ears. There it was, line after line of charges I didn't recognize. A high-end sports watch from an online boutique, premium supplement orders shipped to an address that wasn't ours, a receipt for an upscale athletic store that carried gear I'd never seen her wear. My stomach dropped. These weren't just harmless splurges. They were gifts, and every dollar came from the joint account I funded with overtime hours and aching muscles. I pictured him unwrapping that watch, her smile glowing brighter than any candlelight we'd shared. The betrayal that had once felt like a hidden bruise now flared into something bone deep. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, the only sound the faint tick of the wall clock. Anger threatened to spill over, hot, reckless, dangerous. But beneath it, another feeling crept in, a cold, deliberate clarity. An impulsive confrontation would give her the drama she thrived on. No, she didn't deserve my rage. She deserved my silence, and a reckoning she wouldn't see coming. I began taking notes, dates, transactions, screenshots of every charge. Each click of the mouse became a quiet promise. The pain of her affair was sharp, but this, the theft of the life I'd built penny by penny, cut deeper. I shut the laptop, the blue light fading from the room. My hands were steady now. If she thought she was in control, she was about to learn how wrong she was. I spent the next few days moving through life like an actor in a play only I knew existed. Each smile, each casual good morning felt like a prop masking the storm that churned beneath my ribs. While she texted furiously on the couch, I slipped out during my lunch breaks, my own secret errands unfolding like clockwork. First stop was an old college buddy who'd become a lawyer. We met at a quiet cafe, the hiss of the espresso machine covering every hushed word. I laid out the story, not every sordid detail, just enough for him to understand. His eyes hardened as he listened, then softened with something like pity. "Move your income," he advised firmly. "Close off the joint account. You're the sole leaseholder. Good. You can change the locks the day rent is due. Do it by the book. Don't give her grounds to fight back." I nodded, the weight of his words settling like a blueprint in my chest. That afternoon, I opened a new personal account and redirected my paycheck, fingers steady despite the tremor I felt inside. Watching the confirmation page appear on the screen felt like reclaiming a piece of myself she hadn't stolen. The landlord was next. We spoke in the hallway while he adjusted a flickering light. "You're on the lease," he said after a quick glance at the paperwork. "You've got the right to change the locks whenever you want. Just give me the date." I told him the day the rent would post. He gave a slow nod, as if he understood more than he let on. At home, I wore my calm like armor. She laughed over her phone, tossed me distracted smiles, and told me about another late-night cardio session. I matched every grin with one of my own, my pulse a quiet drum of anticipation. The stage was set. All that remained was to wait for the perfect moment to bring the curtain down. It was nearly 2 a.m. when the door finally creaked open. I'd been sitting in the half-dark for hours, the only light a thin stripe from the street lamp cutting across the living room floor. She stepped inside, keys jingling like a careless melody, and the scent hit me before the door, even latched, musky cologne, sharp and foreign. A smell that didn't belong anywhere near our home. She didn't notice me at first. Her grin was slow, almost triumphant, as she slipped off her jacket and hummed some upbeat tune. My heart gave a single heavy thud, then seemed to vanish, leaving only the roar of blood in my ears in that moment. The woman I had trusted more than anyone else in the world looked like a stranger wearing my wife's face. All the years of shared laughter, the quiet mornings over coffee, the promises whispered in the dark. Every memory cracked like thin ice beneath my feet. I waited for her eyes to find me. When they finally did, she startled just a flicker before masking it with a casual smile. "You're still up?" she asked lightly, as if the night were young and nothing was wrong. I opened my mouth, but no words came. The silence stretched, heavy enough to bow the walls. I felt something inside me splinter, not a sudden snap of rage, but a slow, grinding break. The marriage I had been fighting to preserve wasn't just wounded. It was already gone, a carcass I'd been too blind to bury. Grief swelled like a tide, then receded, leaving behind something far colder. The tears I expected never came. Instead, a quiet clarity settled over me, a steadiness I hadn't known I possessed. Whatever love had once lived here had died long before tonight. And now, so had my hesitation. The next evening I left work early, my heart thrumming with a purpose I couldn't quite name. I parked a block from the gym and killed the engine, sinking low in the seat as the cool dusk settled over the lot. The building's neon sign flickered like a heartbeat against the deepening sky. For 30 tense minutes I watched the entrance, every shadowed figure sharpening the ache in my chest. At last she appeared, ponytail swaying, cheeks flushed, with the glow I used to think was for me. She scanned the street like a thief, checking for witnesses, then walked straight into the arms of a man I didn't need to be introduced to. His broad shoulders and familiar trainer's jacket were burned into my memory from her stories. They didn't speak at first. He simply cupped her face with a casual intimacy that stole the breath from my lungs. Then, under the buzzing glow of the sign, she tilted her chin and kissed him. Slow, certain, like it had been theirs all along. The world around me narrowed to that single image. Tires hummed on distant pavement. A cold breeze rattled the gym's glass doors. None of it reached me. My chest felt hollow, my hands icy against the steering wheel. I thought I'd explode with rage, but instead a strange stillness took root. No confrontation, no shouted accusations. That would give her the chaos she deserved. I turned the key, the quiet rumble of the engine masking the throb of my pulse. Without a glance back, I eased the car into the street, the memory of their kiss seared behind my eyes like a brand. The proof was no longer on my phone, it was etched into me, and as the city lights blurred past, my decision crystallized into something unshakable. It was time to end this on my terms. The next morning, the apartment felt unnaturally still, as if it sensed the storm I carried inside. She had left early for yet another morning session, the scent of her perfume lingering faintly in the hallway. I waited until her car's engine faded down the street, then exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Today wasn't about rage, it was about precision. First, the bank. I moved with a calm that surprised me, each signature and keystroke a quiet reclaiming of the life she'd siphoned away. I emptied the joint account we once called our safety net, transferring every cent into the personal account I'd opened in secret. The teller handed me the confirmation slip. The crisp paper felt heavier than steel in my hand. Next came the landlord. He met me at the door with a nod, toolbox already in hand. The metallic clink of new locks echoed through the hallway like a final verdict. As the old deadbolt dropped into his palm, I felt something inside me loosen, an invisible shackle snapping free. Back inside, I moved quickly. I gathered the few belongings that truly mattered, a box of letters from my parents, the watch my grandfather left me, a photo of us from happier days that no longer hurt, but warned. Everything else, her clothes, her decor, the life she thought she controlled, stayed exactly where it was. Finally, I placed a single envelope on the kitchen table. Inside were printed screenshots of every message I had collected, every winking emoji, every midnight promise to a man who wasn't me. I sealed it without a note. The evidence spoke louder than any goodbye. Before leaving, I paused at the door and glanced back at the quiet apartment. No fury, no second thoughts, only the steady certainty that my silence was the sharpest strike I could deliver. I turned the new key in the lock and walked away, the echo of the click trailing me like a final, perfect punctuation. Evening settled like a slow bruise across the sky when her car finally pulled into the driveway. I stood half hidden in the shadow of the neighbor's porch, heart steady, breath slow. She hopped out with the same casual swagger I'd seen 100 times, swinging her gym bag over her shoulder. For a split second she was still the woman I'd once loved, until she reached for the door. The key rattled against the new lock, a sharp, metallic scrape that cut through the quiet street. She frowned, tried again. Another scrape. Her shoulders stiffened. I saw the first flicker of confusion cross her face, a tiny crack in the mask she wore so easily. She set the bag down and searched her purse, pulling out the key ring like maybe the right key would magically appear. When it didn't, she pounded the door with the flat of her palm. "Hello, babe?" The nickname fell flat against the wood. Then her gaze caught the envelope on the mat. She bent to pick it up, tearing it open with the impatience of someone expecting an apology. The papers fluttered under the porch light, screenshot after screenshot of her late-night messages, each one a mirror reflecting her betrayal. Her confident grin drained to a ghostly blank.
No, no, she whispered, voice breaking.
The gym bag slid from her shoulder and thudded to the porch. She sank to her knees, fingers trembling as she clutched the pages. A soft sob escaped her, then another, until the quiet street carried the sound like a confession. She knocked again, harder this time, pleading through the door, her voice cracking with panic.
Please let me in.
We can talk.
I can explain. From my hiding place I watched her crumble, the woman who had mocked my trust, now begging to be heard. For the first time in months, the power was mine.
And I didn't move. Her pounding started as a frantic rhythm, then slipped into a desperate, uneven beat.
Please, just open the door, she cried, her voice sharp with panic. I can explain.
It wasn't what it looked like. Each word scraped against the quiet night like a dull blade. I pressed my back to the wall beside the door, every muscle rigid, heart racing but strangely unmoved. The porch light cast her shadow across the siding, a restless silhouette of guilt and fear. She jiggled the handle, knocked again, then switched to pleading whispers.
I made a mistake.
We can fix this. You don't understand. Windows across the street lit up one by one. Curtains shifted. Neighbors' faces appeared in the glow, drawn by the commotion. Their curious stares turned her panic into something raw. Public humiliation. Her sobs grew louder, echoing off the brick like a confession she couldn't take back. I stood there, breathing in the faint scent of her perfume seeping through the doorframe, the same scent that had haunted my sleepless nights. Now it only smelled like a memory. Finally, I let my voice cut through the silence, calm, firm, and colder than I'd ever heard it.
It's over.
Don't contact me again. Her crying stopped for a heartbeat, replaced by a soft gasp.
Please, you can't just... But I didn't answer.
I grabbed the small duffel I'd packed hours earlier, each zipper already sealed with quiet resolve. My footsteps were deliberate as I walked down the hall, the sound of her fists dulling behind me. Outside, the night air met me like a clean slate. I unlocked my car, the metallic click almost ceremonial. Behind me, her sobs spilled into the street, thin and broken, while the neighbors watched in uneasy silence. I started the engine without looking back. Whatever we had was already ashes. Tonight, I simply closed the door. Weeks have passed since that night, and the memory of her sobs has faded to a distant echo, more like a warning bell than a wound. At first, the silence in my new apartment felt like a canyon. I'd wake to the hum of the refrigerator and the soft creak of the floorboards, and for a heartbeat, I'd brace for the sound of her footsteps. But the only footsteps now are mine, steady and sure. Therapy became my lifeline. I sat across from a calm-eyed counselor who listened without flinching as I spilled the chaos I'd carried for years. Overwork, blind trust, the slow erosion of self-worth. Betrayal doesn't define you, she said once, her voice even but certain.
How you heal does. Those words rooted themselves deep.
A quiet mantra I repeated every morning. Friends I hadn't leaned on in years resurfaced with unexpected warmth. Beer on late Fridays, long hikes where the smell of pine cut through the heaviness. With every conversation, the narrative I'd been clinging to, that I was the man left behind, began to unravel. In its place grew something sturdier, the understanding that I had survived the unthinkable and built a life that was mine alone. Financially, I was secure. The account I'd quietly moved my savings into had become a symbol of freedom rather than fear. Each bill I paid on my own felt like a small victory. I no longer measure my worth against the night she chose someone else. The betrayal didn't break me. It revealed a strength I hadn't known was there. Standing on my balcony now, the city spread beneath a sky streaked with fading gold. I breathe in air that finally feels like it belongs to me. Trust will come again when I choose it, and only on my terms. For the first time in years, the future doesn't scare me.
It waits open and wide, and I'm ready to walk into it, unshaken and free.